The gathering storm, the great hall of Galactic Council Station, Nexus 7 hummed with tension as representatives from 47 different species gathered for what many considered the most important session in recent memory. Captain Elena Vasquez adjusted her pristine blue uniform and surveyed the assembled delegates with practiced calm. As humanity's diplomatic liaison, she had grown accustomed to being the center of attention, but today felt different. Today, the whispers carried an edge of genuine concern, even fear. The humans had been part of the Galactic Council for only 37 standard years, yet their influence had grown exponentially. Unlike other species who had taken centuries to establish themselves, humanity had managed to forge trade partnerships, establish colonies, and build diplomatic relationships with remarkable speed. What made other species uncomfortable was not just the pace of human expansion, but the methods they employed. Admiral Vexkar of the Drakniri Empire rose from his seat. His reptilian features twisted in what passed for a scowl among his people. The Dragnari were known throughout the galaxy as formidable warriors. Their society built on strength, conquest, and the glory of battle. They respected power above all else, and humanity's approach to galactic politics baffled them completely. Honored delegates, Vexkar's voice boomed through the translation systems. We gather today to address a growing concern. The humans expand their territory not through conquest, as is proper, but through what they call diplomacy and trade. Agreements. They build schools instead of fortresses, hospitals instead of military bases, and research stations instead of weapons platforms. A murmur of agreement rippled through several delegations. Captain Vasquez remained perfectly still, her expression neutral, though she noticed General Marcus Chen observing from the gallery above. His presence here was no coincidence, and she suspected this meeting would require more than diplomatic finesse. Councillor Zephyrin of the Etherian Collective spoke next, her translucent form shimmering with the soft blue hues that indicated concern among her people. The Etherians were natural mediators, their entire civilization built on harmony and understanding. Admiral Dexkar, surely the human approach demonstrates wisdom. They seek to build rather than destroy, to create connections rather than divisions. That is precisely the problem, Dexkar snarled. No species achieves such rapid expansion through peaceful means alone. The humans must possess military capabilities they have not revealed. This deception threatens the balance of power we have maintained for millennia. Captain Vasquez finally stood, her movement drawing immediate attention from every delegate in the hall. At average human height, she was smaller than most representatives present, yet her presence commanded respect. Admiral Vexkar raises an interesting point, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. He suggests that successful expansion requires military conquest. Perhaps this reveals more about Draknari limitations than human deception. The insult was delivered with such diplomatic precision that several delegates took a moment to process it. Dexkar's scales bristled with anger, but Vasquez continued before he could respond. Humanity has been transparent about our capabilities from our first contact with the Council. We maintain defensive fleets, as do all member species. We protect our colonies and trade routes, as is our right and responsibility. What we do not do is measure success by the number of worlds conquered or species subjugated. A new voice joined the debate from the Corvani delegation. Ambassador Xylphus, whose species had evolved from pack hunters, leaned forward with predatory interest. Captain Vasquez speaks of transparency, yet human military specifications remain classified. Your defensive fleets operate under communication blackouts. Your colonies maintain what you call research facilities that our long-range sensors cannot penetrate. If humans truly seek peace, why the secrecy? Alina felt a familiar weight settle on her shoulders, the burden of representing not just her government, but her entire species. She had hoped this day would never come, but she had always known it was inevitable. Peaceful coexistence required trust, and trust could not survive indefinite secrecy. Ambassador Zilthus, you speak of secrecy, as if it were inherently deceptive, but every species in this chamber maintains classified information. The Drachnari do not share their weapons technology. The Etherians protect their consciousness-linking techniques. The Corvani guard their pack-hunting strategies. Humanity simply chooses to classify different information. What information? Dexcar demanded, rising to his full imposing height. What do humans hide that requires such extensive concealment? Before Vasquez could respond, General Chen's voice echoed from the gallery above. May I address the council, Captain? His tone was respectful, but carried an authority that made every military representative in the chamber take notice. Chen was a legend among human forces, though most aliens knew little about his background. Vasquez nodded, recognizing that the time for pure diplomacy had passed. General Marcus Chun, Strategic Defense Coordinator for Human Colonial Forces. Chen descended to the main floor, his weathered face bearing the marks of someone who had seen too much conflict. Unlike Vasquez's pristine uniform, his bore subtle indicators of extensive field experience. He moved with the careful economy of motion that spoke of countless battles survived. Honored delegates, Chen began, you ask what humanity conceals. The answer is simple, though you may not find it satisfactory. We conceal our true military capabilities because we learned long ago that overwhelming strength creates fear, and fear makes peace impossible. Impossible claims, Dexcar scoffed. No single species possesses military might sufficient to threaten the entire galaxy. Such power is fantasy. Chun's smile held no warmth. Admiral, humanity fought a war before we reached the stars. We called it the final war because we swore it would be the last time our species would engage in total conflict. The weapons we developed, the tactics we perfected, the industrial capacity we created. We keep these things classified, not to deceive, but to protect. Protect whom? Councillor Zephyrin asked, her ethereal voice carrying genuine curiosity rather than suspicion. Everyone, Chen replied simply. Humanity learned that true victory in war comes not from defeating your enemy, but from making war itself unnecessary. We expanded peacefully because we understand the alternative. Every hospital we build, every school we establish, every trade, agreement we sign serves a single purpose, ensuring we never again have to demonstrate what we are truly capable of. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this information. Several species had built their entire civilizations around military prowess, and the concept of deliberately concealing strength seemed almost incomprehensible. Ambassador Zilthus broke the silence. You claim overwhelming capabilities, yet provide no proof. Without demonstration, your words are merely intimidation tactics. General Chen exchanged a long look with Captain Vasquez. She gave an almost imperceptible nod, understanding the weight of the decision they were making together. Very well, Admiral Vexcar. You command the largest single fleet in the galaxy. How many warships can the Drachnari Empire deploy for immediate action? Vexcar's pride overcame his caution. The Drachnari maintained 12,000 vessels of various classes, from scouts to dreadnoughts. We can mobilize 8,000 for immediate deployment. No other single species commands such might. Chen activated his personal communicator, speaking in clear English that the translation systems rendered for all delegates. Command, this is Chen. Authorization, Delta 77. Declassify formation strength for Sol Defense Grid, Terra Guard Fleet, and Colonial Patrol Networks. Display authorization, Nexus 7 Council Chamber, Diplomatic Necessity. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing what appeared to be standard fleet organization charts. The numbers began populating slowly, and as they did, the color began draining from several alien faces. Sol Defense Grid, 127,000 vessels. Terra Guard Fleet, 89,000 vessels. Colonial Patrol Networks, 156,000 vessels. Deep Space Reconnaissance, 43,000 vessels. Strategic Reserve, 298,000 vessels. The display continued updating as additional fleet designations appeared. By the time it finished, the total exceeded 700,000 military vessels of various classes, not including support ships, automated defense platforms, or classified experimental units. Dexgar stared at the display in stunned silence. Several other military representatives were frantically working their own communication devices, attempting to verify the information through their intelligence networks. This cannot be accurate, whispered Ambassador Zealthis. No species could construct such a force without detection. Chen deactivated the display. Humanity began serious military production 40 years before first contact. We had expected to encounter hostile forces among the stars. When we discovered a peaceful galactic community, we faced a choice: reveal our preparations and risk destabilizing everything we found, or maintain secrecy while working to ensure such capabilities would never be needed. Why reveal this now? Counselor Zephyrin asked, her form shifting to colors Alina had never seen before, indicating emotions beyond the normal Etherian spectrum. Because, Chen replied, some among you are beginning to probe human colonies, testing our resolve and pushing toward conflicts that would force us to demonstrate these capabilities through action rather than words. We prefer transparency to tragedy. The price of Peace-Tree days. After General Chen's revelation to the Galactic Council, the first attacks began. Despite the overwhelming evidence of human military capabilities, several species had chosen to interpret the disclosure as elaborate deception. Admiral Vexcar had withdrawn the Draconary Empire from the Council proceedings, claiming that no species could possess such power without having used it for conquest. His departure had been followed by representatives from 12 other militaristic civilizations. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the Emergency Command Center of Nexus 7, watching incoming reports with growing concern. The attacks had begun simultaneously across multiple human colonies, coordinated strikes designed to test human response patterns. The aggressors had chosen targets they believed would demonstrate human weakness: research stations with minimal defensive capabilities, agricultural colonies with civilian populations, and remote outposts far from major fleet concentrations. Report from New Geneva Colony, Communications Officer Torres announced, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Draconary forces have blockaded the system and are demanding surrender. Colony population, 43,000 civilians, mostly agricultural, specialists and their families. General Chen materialized on the holographic communicator from Terra Command, his expression grim. Alina, they're not just testing our resolve. Intelligence suggests this is a coordinated effort to force humanity into a military response that would justify broader conflict. They want us to reveal our true capabilities through action. How many colonies are under threat? Vasquez asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. 17 systems, Chen replied. They've chosen carefully, targeting locations where our response options are limited. If we deploy overwhelming force, we confirm their fears about human militarism. If we respond with restraint, they'll interpret it as weakness and escalate. The tactical display showed the scope of the crisis. Human colonies were scattered across a vast region of space, connected by trade routes and communication networks that had seemed secure just days before. Now, those same routes were being systematically threatened by forces that had once been neutral neighbors. General Torres interrupted. Priority communication from Commander Sarah Mitchell at New Geneva. She's requesting immediate evacuation support. Commander Mitchell's image appeared alongside Chen's, her uniform bearing the marks of recent combat. Behind her, the lights of New Geneva's command center flickered with the irregular patterns that indicated partial power failure. Sir, the Draconari have begun orbital bombardment of our defensive platforms. We're holding for now, but they're clearly testing our response patterns. They're not trying to destroy us quickly, they're studying how we fight. Chen's jaw tightened. Mitchell was one of humanity's most capable field commanders, and if she was reporting tactical probes rather than all-out assault, the situation was even more dangerous than it appeared. Sarah, what's your assessment of their objectives? They want us to escalate, sir. Every engagement has been carefully calibrated to push us toward deploying heavier assets. They're particularly interested in our automated defense systems and fleet coordination protocols. This isn't about conquering territory, it's about intelligence gathering. Captain Vasquez stepped forward. Commander Mitchell, what about civilian evacuations? Can you protect the population? Mitchell's expression grew even more serious. Ma'am, that's the worst part. They're not targeting civilians directly, but they've made it clear that any evacuation attempts will be interpreted as military movements and met with force. They want our people trapped, so we'll have to choose between abandoning them or revealing our capabilities to save them. The communication was interrupted by another urgent alert. Torres looked up from her station with barely controlled panic. Captain, additional reports coming in. The Corvani have engaged human shipping in the Outer Rim. The VEC-3 Union has declared human research stations in their territory to be military installations, subject to immediate seizure. We're looking at coordinated action across 18 different species. General Chen closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, Captain Vasquez saw something that made her understand why he had been chosen for his position. It was not anger or fear, but the terrible clarity of someone who had hoped never to face this decision again. Alina Chen said quietly, I need you to understand what happens next. Humanity spent centuries learning to wage war efficiently. We developed technologies, strategies, and industrial capabilities that we hoped would never be necessary. But we also learned something else. The only way to truly end a conflict is to make the cost of continuing it unacceptable to everyone involved. What are you saying, General? I'm saying that humanity's greatest weapon has always been our restraint. But that restraint has limits, and some of our neighbors are about to discover what lies beyond them. Chen activated his command authorization codes, and across human space, protocols that had remained dormant for decades began initializing. At New Geneva, Commander Mitchell received new orders that caused her to pause and read them twice before. Acknowledging Similar messages were being transmitted to every human military installation across the galaxy. Operation Endgame, authorization confirmed, Mitchell reported. Sir, are you certain about this approach? Asterisk Commander, we've spent 30 years trying to build a peaceful galaxy. Some of our neighbors have decided to test whether that peace was built on strength or weakness. It's time they learned the answer. What happened next would be studied by military strategists for generations. At New Geneva, the Drachnary forces expected human reinforcements to arrive through conventional jump points, following predictable tactical patterns. Instead, the human response materialized from locations that should have been impossible. Ships emerging from hyperspace at coordinates that violated every known principle of faster-than-light navigation, appearing inside the Drachnary formation, rather than at its edges. Admiral Vexkar found himself facing not the small defensive force he had expected, but a fleet that outnumbered his own by a factor of 10. More disturbing than the numbers was the technology. Human vessels moved with impossible precision, their weapons systems targeting specific subsystems on Drachnary, ships with accuracy that suggested real-time intelligence beyond anything known to galactic science. This is Admiral Vexkar of the Drachnary Empire, he transmitted on open channels. You will withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences. The response came from Commander Mitchell, her voice carrying through space with the calm certainty of someone who held every advantage. Admiral, you have 30 seconds to cease bombardment and withdraw beyond the system boundary. This is your only warning. Vexkar's pride would not allow retreat in the face of what he still believed was human deception. You threaten me with ships that should not exist, using technology that violates physical law. I will not be intimidated by elaborate illusions. Admiral Mitchell replied, Humanity does not deal in illusions. We deal in certainties. You have 15 seconds to comply. When Vexkar failed to respond, the human demonstration began. Every Drachnary weapon system simultaneously experienced what their engineers would later describe as impossible cascade failures. Navigation systems began providing random coordinates. Life support systems remained functional but switched to backup power. Communication arrays began broadcasting Drachnary tactical frequencies on open channels, making their military communications available to anyone with a standard receiver. Not a single Drachnary soldier was harmed, but their entire fleet had been rendered combat ineffective in under 30 seconds. Across the galaxy, similar demonstrations were occurring. The Corvini found their ships trapped in hyperspace corridors that shouldn't exist, helpless but unharmed until they agreed to withdraw. The Vectri discovered that their seized human research stations had been automated decoys, while the real installations had been so thoroughly concealed that their existence had never been detected. Within 6 hours, the coordinated assault on human space had collapsed entirely, but more importantly, every species in the galaxy had received an education in human capabilities that no classroom could have provided. General Chen addressed the reformed Galactic Council from Terra Command, his image transmitted to every member world. Honored delegates, humanity revealed our military capabilities, not as a threat, but as an explanation. We do not fight to win conflicts, we fight to end them. The demonstrations you witnessed represent technologies we developed during our final war. Weapons designed not to destroy enemies, but to make warfare itself impossible. The chamber was silent as delegates processed what they had witnessed. Admiral Vexkar, his fleet safely returned to Drachnary space, but thoroughly humbled, spoke first. General Chen, such capabilities Why did humanity not use them to establish dominion over the galaxy? Chun's answer would be remembered as one of the most important statements in galactic history. Admiral, because dominion achieved through force is not peace, it is merely suspended warfare. Humanity learned that the strongest position is held by those who never have to prove their strength. We expanded through cooperation because we understood that true security comes not from controlling others, but from making them want to cooperate. Counselor Zephelin's ethereal form shimmered with colors that indicated deep contemplation. So humanity's peaceful expansion was not weakness disguised as strength, but strength disguised as wisdom. No, Chen replied. It was wisdom learned through strength. Humanity's greatest victory was not conquering our enemies, but making the decision never to create enemies in the first place. We fight not to win, but so we never have to fight again. In the months that followed, the galaxy settled into a new understanding. Human colonies continued their peaceful expansion, but now every species understood that this peace was chosen rather than imposed by circumstance. Trade agreements were signed with greater enthusiasm, scientific cooperation increased exponentially, and the threat of large-scale conflict diminished to levels not seen since the Council's founding. Admiral Vexkar would later write in his memoirs that humanity had taught the galaxy its most valuable lesson, that the ultimate expression of power is having the wisdom never to use it. The Dragnari Empire became one of humanity's closest allies, their warrior culture finding new purpose in protecting the peace rather than disrupting it. And on distant Terra, General Chen updated humanity's strategic files with a simple notation. Operation Endgame successful. Projected timeline for next demonstration. Hopefully never.